Well, summertime in the south yet again. But in parts of northeast Texas, adjoining Louisiana and Arkansas, we've got this MCS that has moved southeast overnight and during the morning hours. And there you can see it. Most of the cells are kind of elevated, especially up north in Dallas. You saw up here, those were elevated cells, and we're left with that right there, some deeper cells down around the Lufkin area. Now, this is a pretty extensive region of clouds, and you can see the cold pool. Looks like there's evidence of that covering pretty much all of North Texas. The NAM yesterday, it developed that little MCS, and certainly it probably produced a little bit of a cold pool. This is what it forecasted 30 hours out. It's in the ballpark, but probably underestimating the activity just a little bit. And it's definitely going for a bit of a cold pool right in that area. And so we look at the fields there, 0Z, into last night, and we can see a warm front coming together right there. That's frontogenesis. And by the current time, it had forecast something like that. Well, let's jump ahead and see what the newest run has. And there's a front in that area reinforced by the convection that we saw overnight. And the temperature fields definitely do bear out that outflow. See how the air mass is much cooler in the Paris, Texarkana, and Longview area. And that's helping to reinforce the gradient along that boundary there. So tomorrow it looks like that boundary will be up along the Red River and then move rapidly northward during the day. So for the surface chart, I went ahead and went something like this. I think a lot of this is actually outflow generated, and then I found this secondary boundary right here dividing the 85-degree readings at Lubbock from the 98s there at Midland. This definitely looks like a different air mass right around there. Anyway, looks dry in Arizona there. We can see the heat low established in Nevada, giving us that convergence of the low-level wind field into that area and helping to bring the moisture, what little moisture there is, up into Utah. And there's the visible satellite imagery. We can see the lack of moisture in Arizona and Utah, so that heat low that's in Nevada is not really doing much. Most of the better moisture is up in Colorado and New Mexico, so we should see thunderstorms light up there this afternoon. In the northwestern U.S., a stagnant weather pattern predominates. Looks like a weak frontal system there up in South Dakota. However, ahead of that warm front, we see the dew points are up there. 63 out here in eastern South Dakota, and 60, I think that would be up in the Aberdeen area. And we can see 60s all the way up into eastern North Dakota. And my eye was drawn to the marginal VFR. See that blue right there? Even though there is moisture in central Nebraska, I think my brain goes instinctively to those clear skies, and it thinks that there's not enough moisture depth to be significant, and that could very well be the case. For severe forecasting, we like to see these cloud fields out ahead of the warm front. And that indicates deeper moisture that's not going to get mixed out once we get heating. And we see that reflected in the satellite loop there. See the denser stratocumulus clouds out there around the Sioux City area. And certainly nothing in central Nebraska is going to support storms, at least for now. I mean, this stuff could always come together up north of the North Platte area. There is enough moisture for storms in the Grand Teton Range and Yellowstone there. So those cells are going up. They're a little bit high-based, and plenty of cells down there in the mountains of Colorado. Well, it looks like cold air advection is still raking eastern Ontario and the Montreal, Ottawa area of Canada. You can see those cumulus towers in place. And then further south, this looks to be more of a warm air advection regime. These look more like streets instead of cumulus towers and transverse bands. And there's the surface map in the northeastern U.S. Definitely some mild conditions there in New York and in the Toronto area. And it's all being driven by this 1020 millibar high over Indiana. They've almost certainly had some cool nights over the past couple of days. And temperatures in Chicago starting to come up to 76. And the remains of the tropical storm, hurricane, that looks to be out of the picture. I think it's probably merged with that occluded system up in Quebec. NHC does not appear to be tracking that anymore. Let's see if we can find that in their archives. Looks like the final advisory was just before dawn this morning. And there it is. 50 miles northwest of Quebec City, so it's north of the St. Lawrence River. Maximum sustained winds 40 miles an hour, 1,000 millibars. So yeah, that storm is out of here. And it's kind of funny seeing NHC predicting precip amounts in southern Quebec, but yeah, there it is. And in the southeastern U.S., looks like we have a frontal system in the Atlanta area. This is not a day I would want to be flying into Atlanta because it appears that baroclinic low is right up on them. Cold front extending westward into southern Mississippi, Alexandria, Louisiana there, and then connecting back up into that MCS in northeast Texas. The flow appears to be onshore in Florida. Looks like it's offshore in Louisiana, so that's indicating a drying trend in that region. And then we go back to onshore flow in Texas, where it looks like we're starting to build up southerly flow. And that'll probably help lift that frontal system northward over the next day. And there's the satellite loop there. We can almost make out that frontal position. Matches up pretty well with the surface data. And out ahead of it looks like some unstable conditions and a sheared environment. You see those anvils, how they're being carried to the northeast. So that's helping to prolong storm severity and possibly amplifying any vertical motion that would help remove the cap, whatever capping there is in that region. And even if there's no cap, that would increase the destabilization of the air mass. And looks active once again in Florida. Definitely not the time of year to be visiting Disney World. Any prospects in the tropics? Well, this little disturbance is not expected to develop. And then the 5-day tropical outlook. Not much of anything. Looks pretty quiet. And certainly the tropical easterlies, this is the development area for waves coming off of Western Africa, looks very quiet. The GFS does have one wave departing the African coast around the 7th or 8th, and we see that develop somewhat out in the southeastern North Atlantic. And we'll see if that comes together. And looks like another one a little later. Looks like that's towards the 15th, 16th, 17th. There it is right there. Yeah, that's going to be the 17th, 18th. So we'll watch that one. That one looks a little bit more well-developed. And those disturbances could always move towards the Caribbean, but that's still a long ways out. Yeah, this one looks like it's coming together. So we'll see what happens with that. That's looking more towards late August. Now, I believe in yesterday's weathercast we talked about the upper level patterns. We'll just kind of go over things very quickly in case there was too much information yesterday. Anyway, we've got a very progressive flow across the U.S. This is kind of astonishing for this time of year. Usually we've got a subtropical high kind of locked in over the southwest or sitting over the southeast, but not the case today. We've got westerly flow all the way down towards the southern tier states. Large trough in the eastern U.S. right there. That's kind of overlying the cold air in the Ohio River Basin. And then we got this other trough working onto the coast of California. Let's see what happens between now and the weekend. Going into tomorrow, yeah, the mean jet position, you can kind of see that right there. Kind of a weak polar front jet and maybe even a split flow with a northern branch up there in the Hudson Bay region. Anyway, it looks like the subtropical high is building in across West Texas, so temperatures are going to come up in places like Lubbock and Midland and Odessa. Towards the weekend, yep, building in the subtropical ridge. Now it's starting to look a little bit more like August, but you can see the depressed heights over Louisiana. So we got a tropical disturbance coming together in that region. And then just advancing forward into next week. Now it's starting to look more like August. There's the polar front jet well up to the north. A weaker branch from Arizona up to Kansas. And then along the Texas Gulf Coast, looks like that tropical disturbance is kind of affecting the weather in that area. So probably kind of unsettled all the way from Corpus Christi up to Beaumont and New Orleans. And then just going way up ahead to the end of next week, there's another little depression across eastern Texas, and then we've got this trough digging into the west coast. And that one makes some headway into the central plains, so probably chances for storms going up around mid-month in Colorado, Nebraska, and South Dakota. Now we can see the subtropical ridge kind of settled in across Tennessee. That's actually a high, a closed high there. And then easterly flow all the way out to Texas and another tropical disturbance down in South Texas there. Precipitable water is definitely a big part of the picture this time of year. There's some very high values up there in the Red River right now. So no wonder we got storms feeding through that area. And let's see, going up to the weekend, building the southerly flow into the Midwest. Then you can see this very prominent cold front bringing in cooler, drier air into the western Great Lakes and the western Midwest. Looks like that doesn't even reach the Ohio River Valley before return flow starts setting up. And just a very quick look into next week and the following weekend. Looks like a stagnant pattern. Moisture covering all of the southeastern quarter of the U.S. And with those higher values in East Texas, it looks like we're kind of dominated by a tropical air mass along the Gulf Coast. And down to the south, GFS picking up on some sort of system there around the Yucatan. Let's go down south and look at that. Okay, so we're looking at precipitable water starting out for today, going into the weekend. You can see that deep easterly flow kind of spreading westward across the Caribbean. Looks like some very high values coming into Nicaragua and Honduras around Sunday or Monday. Usually that tells me there's probably some sort of easterly wave moving through the flow. And let's see, what's the next big disturbance coming up? Here comes another little easterly wave. This is around Friday next week. You can see a little Pacific system there. And yeah, there we go. The 17th looks like development out in the Caribbean. You can see that coming together, developing off the coast of Nicaragua. And that kind of spirals up into the Yucatan around the 20th. Again, remember, this is a very preliminary look. So this is telling us things may be active in the Gulf of Mexico around the 20th through the 25th. And there goes some sort of hurricane indicated by the GFS, and that's heading right for Texas, possibly Louisiana. So going strictly off model output, landfall around the 22nd, 23rd. Anyway, that's something to keep an eye on in the long term. I definitely wouldn't start preparing for anything like that right now, but of course it is smart to take your precautions if you're down on the Gulf Coast, and it's better to pull your batteries and water jugs together now rather than when the watches start going up. Okay, that's about all I got for today. Thank you all for watching. I have sent out some emails to our supporters today, thanking them for the many months of support, helping to keep this program going, and hopefully we can keep doing it for a while. Take care, and we will see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.